professional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And it is the end of the month of July, which means it's the end of theater month.
Theater!
Over here on the podcast. So to wrap things up, we went very classic this week.
Too classic.
Well, okay, I mean, granted, I say that very classic, but technically, and yes, set in a classic way, but technically modern, because it's not like the movies from 50 years ago or anything.
This is true. It's like the most modern one of these that they've made.
Recent, I think so.
I think it is the most recent one.
Yeah. So, anyway, this week we're talking about Macbeth from 2015. If you guys didn't know that Michael Fassbender made an adaptation of Macbeth, here you go. Now you know.
In all of his sexiness and glory.
Oof. Yeah. He's really well suited to this character
really
too.
Is, though.
And I will say he there's a lot of good actors in this movie, but he carries it. The whole time I was like, wow, okay, yeah, very impressive. I'm actually surprised that the performances didn't get more appreciation.
Yeah.
If nothing else. I get it, it's historical drama. It's very long and it's not going to be for everybody because it's quite drawn out. But if you pay attention to what people the performances themselves are very good.
Yeah, and I feel like it didn't get very much hype, this movie.
No, I saw it a little while after it came out because I was like, oh, okay, I'd be curious to see a new adaptation for it, and I went to see it in a very tiny independent theater because nowhere else was playing it.
Showing it, eh?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, I feel like it really didn't get the love that I would have expected it to get, given the cast.
Yeah,
stuff.
you'd think it's a decently stacked cast of people, and you'd
Yeah.
think it would have gotten a little more, I don't know, a little bit more hype anyway, or a little bit more something.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's jump into it. Let's talk about it a little bit anyway.
All hail Macbeth, who shall be king.
So foul and fair a day I have not seen.
Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. Hail King that shall be.
Duncan comes here tonight. If we should fail,
Will not fail.
Just to give anybody who's not aware already, kind of an idea of what things are. Macbeth, or the tragedy of Macbeth, because they were all the tragedy of something at the time, is a Shakespeare play, which my understanding was published in the first folio, which was back in 1623. Or at least that seems to be the earliest iteration of it that exists. Or I'm sorry, it's first performed in 1606 is when it was thought to have been initially conceptualized, basically. And then the publication happened in 1623. Apparently, weirdly, which is, I guess, if I think about some of the other ones and how long they are, technically Macbeth is Shakespeare's shortest tragedy.
Is it really?
Yeah. Well, because, think about how fucking long Hamlet is.
Oh my god, that is so long.
And even Othello does have some parts that are actually quite long
true.
as well. But I always assumed that Othello and Macbeth were on similar footing
I
that
did
way.
too.
Right? Yeah, I don't know.
Because
Apparently.
I know Hamlet is long.
Oh my god, Hamlet is long.
But I really did think that this one and Othello were the same.
Yeah. Background for people who don't know, have never seen it, read about it, whatever, don't know anything about the play. This is Shakespeare's play that has a ton of superstition around it.
It's the one with the witches.
Yeah. So, and I think partially because of that, probably, it's honestly, I think in more modern times, we can think of it as more like coincidence. However, there's a lot of superstition surrounding that the play has basically bad luck attached to it, and misfortune tends to follow in its wake, it's got some sort of curse.
Yeah.
And that over generations has evolved to a point where if you're within a theater, not a cinema, but a theater proper, you are not meant to actually say Macbeth out loud. You're not meant to actually say the word at any time unless you're performing.
Yeah, because people who have done that have died.
So, well, yes and no. It's a lot less than what you think it is. I think it's easy to read stuff online and be like, oh my god, this thing is cursed. But it does seem to be more like coincidence. So a lot of people call it the Scottish play because that's the setting in which it takes place. That's what most people use for it. Some people call it Macbeth. There are a couple of
why? Because they don't want to. Yeah, because they don't want to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And it's because basically, okay, so my understanding is that where this comes from is that when the play was originally, I guess, like either not published necessarily, but when it was originally put on, there are rumors that Shakespeare used actual witches' spells within the text of the play, which of course cursed it. You have to remember, this is 1600s. People were very religious at this time.
They were burning people at the stake
very
at this time.
superstitious at this time, and would have taken things like this incredibly seriously. Yeah. So it would have been very easy for rumors to spread about something like this, about there being some sort of curse or something attached to a particular play.
Yeah.
But apparently, according to like what historians have said, technically, like, you know, it was easy to blame it on Macbeth, but honestly, it seems that there have been more deaths related to like Hamlet than to Macbeth,
really?
Like of like actors who are performing in shows and stuff like that. It might have something to do with the volume of times that, like, you know, Hamlet's been performed, because it's probably Shakespeare's best known tragedy. Well, I guess Romeo and Juliet.
I was gonna say Rom and Jewel kind of take,
but Hamlet's also really up there too. I don't know. It's hard to distinguish kind of which one's more popular.
It is. I mean, I think that, you know, like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and Macbeth are like three of the best known Shakespeare plays, right? I just remember once I was watching this documentary about Macbeth, and like in which the actor had died because he said Macbeth in the theater while they were, you know, practicing, and they had one of those swords, like a practice sword,
right?
But it had like something on the end, and the thing popped off, and he ended up
actually getting stabbed. And I'm sure that things like that do happen, but they can happen, unfortunately, in a lot of other
of course, but it's just
live productions, you know, as well, if things are not safe.
Funny coincidence.
Yeah, it's just an interesting kind of thing. But it's so as soon as one thing goes wrong, it's so easy to like be like, oh, it's cursed, and just kind of
the witches.
Pretend that everything relates all back to like one particular reason.
Yeah.
Although I do have a fun little like side thing that way, though, like a side story. Technically, when I was in my second year of college, and I studied theater in college, just for reference. We were prepping for one of the shows that we were doing. It wasn't anything Shakespeare. We were doing The Manchurian Candidate. It's a very different type of story. But on opening night, one of our like classmates and one of the castmates decided to like just say Macbeth to fuck with everybody, basically, right before everyone like punched him in the face. It was kind of funny to see. Everybody was very mad. And ironically, that opening night was the only night that we had any technical difficulties at all.
Well, there you go.
My character was like a doctor and had a scene throughout the course of the show that was also being filmed at the same time and projected to like a really big screen on the back. It was giving like this really weird effect. And the camera stopped working properly. And there were another couple of like small things that happened. And it was the only time we'd rehearsed and it hadn't happened.
You see?
You know, we did the other few performances. Nothing happened. It was just that one time. And so everybody blamed him for the rest of the time.
You know, I think you could be a little stitious about it.
Yeah, that's it. You know, there is still some like in the sense that I don't really consider myself all that superstitious, but even I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't say it out of respect for myself and for the other people standing there, you know?
I mean, if it is a wide superstition in the theater world, like, just stick to it, just in case.
Yeah,
you know?
That's it. You never know, really. Okay.
So we digress.
Let's get into the movie, shall we?
Right.
Let's get into the actual film and the actual story. So, Macbeth, I think I said earlier, was released in 2015 and has currently a score of 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb and 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, I don't know why nobody's seen this. I'm actually surprised. And again, I think it's just because of the cast I'm surprised. Although at the same time, I'm sure, you know, we got to the mid-2010s and everybody was probably like, I don't want to see Shakespeare anymore, unless people are seeing it on the stage. And those people specifically want to. So I think that probably makes a difference.
To be fair, I am one of those people. I started watching this movie and I was bored to tears.
Yeah, so.
Because that is how I feel about watching Shakespeare film adaptations. Like, you know, I understand, obviously, you know, doing it as a movie, you get a much wider reach. You're able to get a lot more people who can watch it. You can get a much bigger cast. Mm-hmm. But there's something lacking. It's like some of the magic is not there.
I get it. I understand, because it's so difficult. Shakespeare is so hard because of the language to a certain extent, and how much, like, how important the language is, I guess, to everything that's happening in the story. And I think that it can be difficult sometimes to watch modern actors, even in a period piece, because this is a period piece set at the time at which these events would have been taking place.
Yep.
It's difficult to watch modern actors use that language in a film because you're so used to seeing them. Like, you associate faces with other roles, with other things, and with this person being someone who is in this current time right now. And so I think it can be kind of difficult to sort of like suspend your disbelief that way.
Well, I think that's what it is. I think because of, if you read a Shakespeare play, a lot of it is based, it's all based in the people and their actions and stuff, right? Like, everything that they're claiming is, supernatural or anything, like, it's all not true. Like, there's always, like, kind of an answer for it at the end in some ways. And when you're watching it, like, as a play, it's much easier, like you said, to suspend your disbelief because you're like, okay, like, they only have so much to work with, like, we're face to face.
Yeah, and
like,
we talked about this in a previous episode when we were talking about sort of like, stage versus film productions, the idea of, like, it doesn't bother you when you're, well, for me anyway, from my experience, it doesn't bother me, like, when watching a stage production to be like, oh, I don't see wires if someone's floating around, or
you don't mind it
I don't
so
see
much.
this, or I don't see the people, walking around between scenes dressed all in black, moving set pieces around. Like, it's fine. It doesn't bother me to see it. But if you saw that in a film, you'd be like, what the fuck?
Well, yeah, and, like, when the plot is hinging purely on the human interactions that are happening, then you're just kind of like, okay, like, yeah, and then you're listening to the story and you're like, so everyone's raving like a lunatic, like, this whole time?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, okay, so here's another one raving like a lunatic, and another one, and another one, and another one, and you're just like,
yeah. At its core, I think that, I guess what makes Macbeth like a good story, and it probably is, like, this is part of the reason why the story keeps being told over and over again, is that it's still relevant in terms of greed and political ambition and ambition that people have to rise above the station that they're in. And I think that that's what keeps it relevant no matter what the year. I don't think it's ever been irrelevant.
Oh, definitely not.
So, but, and I guess, like, you just weave in, like, other elements of, like, supernatural and things like that, which, keep things a little bit more interesting. But basically, the story itself basically follows, that's it, Macbeth is a thane, which is a thing, which my understanding is that that's like Earl adjacent, or it would have been at the time. I don't know that it's a title that still exists necessarily, but in the 1600s, I'm sure that it did, of an area called Glamis, which would have been like in the Scottish Highlands. He has recently basically led the king, whose name is Duncan's, troops into battle. They have defeated all of their enemies, and because of this, and the thane, another thane, because they're everywhere, another thane of an area called Cawdor has been killed. And because of this, now Macbeth has been named Thane of Cawdor, and this is what Duncan has given him in return for basically winning the fucking war for him. Yeah. So he's like, cool. He meets, basically, he doesn't really learn about it through normal means originally. He learns about it through the witches, who are a recurring element, mostly for exposition purposes throughout the course of the story. There are, technically in the movie, there are 4, because they've got a kid with them.
This is true.
Yeah, there are usually 3.
Yep.
But technically, that's it. This is what it is. In the movie, there are actually 4 of them, which is interesting because it's like different iterations. They're all different ages as well. So you've got like sort of like the younger one. You've got your crone, who's the oldest one. And then like, I think, what is it? Maiden Mother Crone, if I'm not mistaken, which is a symbolic thing that you see show up in a lot of different mythology and lore and stuff like that as well.
In like
Greek mythology has it, because don't they have the... what are they called? Like the seers or whatever the hell they are.
Yes.
The ones in Hercules.
Yeah, the ones in Hercules, exactly. They are the seers. Yeah.
There's something like that. Yeah, that's it. Technically that's it. A lot of the time, oftentimes they are depicted as like maiden, mother, and crone, like because it's
Game
like
of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. American Gods has them as well. Where that's it. They're at different stages, because to show like sort of the different stages of life. Basically, that's how they're depicted. So anyway, that's kind of what they're going for with this one, which is cool. I appreciate that. They don't always do that with the witches in Macbeth. Sometimes they're the same age as well. It depends.
I've always understood that they were the same age.
Yeah, see, I kind of thought that to a certain extent. I don't know. Anyway.
It's an adaptation.
Yeah, that's it. However, also, like, you and I saw a play last year that was a take on the Three Witches from Macbeth and what they're doing.
Yeah, but it was a Terry Pratchett
I know, it's like a comedy kind of thing, but they were different ages, technically.
Well, that one was very much made in Mother Crone as well.
Very much. Yeah, that's it, exactly. So, I don't know. So, I think it depends on what your interpretation is of them, basically. Yeah. They're the ones who arrive and who technically tell him this, along with, what's his name, Banquo? Who's his compatriot?
I don't know. Everybody's got the same bloody name in this one.
Fellow human. Anyway, that's it. He's been one of his generals or something, something like that.
There's
who've been fighting together.
In Shakespeare too.
So they pop up. They give exposition, and they're like, "Hey, you're doing this right now. You're about to be basically like named this, and it is technically like a royal adjacent title. Like an earl is that kind of title, right? So he is like, okay, cool, and returns home to see his wife, who oftentimes I think is painted to be like the only villain in this story, which I would very much like to discredit, because I don't think that Lady Macbeth is the only fucking villain in this. I think that Macbeth is his own villain. He has his own mind.
Yes.
And being like everyone claiming that he's just manipulated by a woman, that's such an old school kind of thought process. Yeah. The reason that she's so ambitious is because she can't fucking do it for herself, because she's a woman and she wouldn't have been able to anyway.
Pretty much. And like, it's also because she's, very clearly, and again, it's a way of driving forward the story. Yeah. But it's very much her, like, with, the whispering in his ear saying, like, kill this person,
because she
person.
prays to, like, darker entities, supposedly, in order for this. Anyway, that's it. So that's it. The Thane of Cawdor has been executed because he allied with, like, Norse troops. I think it was the Norse that they were fighting. Yep. And so Macbeth is given the title of Thane of Cawdor, and he's like, holy fuck, they were right. Like, the women who just popped up out of nowhere and then explained that to me, like, they were right. Wow, okay. They have a dinner. There's a whole big banquet, and Duncan names Malcolm, who's one of his sons, his oldest son, I think, as his heir, which, like, fucking obvious. And it's so funny because, like, the Macbeths get all pissed about this, and I'm like, he's his son. Isn't that how royalty works?
Like, because then it goes back to, like, what? If you're the Thane, are you supposed to be, like, next in line for the throne?
Since when is an earl next in line for the throne? Thane and throne. Since when is a fucking earl the next in line for the throne? That don't make no sense. Because to me, that means if Duncan is king, then Malcolm is the prince, right? And so Malcolm reasonably would be the next. That's how it works now.
Well, I pretty much think how that's always worked.
I thought so as well. I thought it was direct descendants and not necessarily you choosing a successor. It was that the successor was your firstborn male heir.
But then you see, Shakespeare does this though. Like in his writing, he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna like fuck with like reality a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you this explicitly. Like you have to kind of figure it out as you're going on."
Yeah, I guess
and it leaves you kind of scratching your head going, wait, is that actually what's happening, or like what's going on?
Yeah, it's true. He does like to fuck with you a little bit, where you're like, oh, are you changing the way that the political system worked at the time and that the monarchy worked at the time, and we just like don't, we're just meant to follow along with that because this is like a fictional world, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, but a bit of explanation would help.
Would be nice. Thank you very much. But no, it's very much up to your interpretation. Perhaps he did explain at some point, but how the hell would we know now?
Well, it's all about the drama, right?
That's
like anything that's going to add drama.
Exactly. So because of this, they're very angry, and which like search me, I have no fucking idea why. And through conversations, Lady Macbeth is like, well, I think you should just kill Duncan. And you were like, wait, what? Yeah. And he's like, I don't know if I'm that ambitious. And she's like, yes, you are. And so he's like, okay, fine. So he literally sneaks into Duncan's tent that night and murders the king, which like, wow, okay. Murders the king. Malcolm enters after this, sees the body, and Macbeth like not even thinly veiled threatens him, fully fucking threatens him. Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, and then people are going to think you did it too. So Malcolm's like, oh my God. And he panics and runs off because he's like, what the fuck do I do? So he flees to England is my understanding. If I'm not mistaken, Malcolm like leaves the country.
Malcolm's such a wimp.
Yeah. Like... Also, he's played by the guy who plays the shitty boyfriend in Midsommar. Nice to see him in something else. There we go.
Before Midsommar.
Yeah, it was been a couple of years before, I think. anyway, after this happens, Macbeth finally is like, oh, I just murdered someone.
And he brings the daggers to his wife, and she's like, what the fuck?
And she's like, what is fucking wrong with you? She's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She goes back and she puts them with the servants, and then she looks at the body. And basically, it is good, though, because what it's kind of indicating to us is I'm like, oh, the guilt's going to kick in real quick with this whole situation.
And that's also a very Shakespeare thing.
Oh, 100%.
Like, and the guilt drives people mad most of the
all
time.
the time. That's usually like what causes people to commit any kind of act, basically by the time you get to like the second or third act of your play. So, and this is where we start to get Lady Macbeth's thing where like, you know, she's got blood on her hands after and it freaks her out. Yeah. And that's like, guys, you gotta like think about it too, because we talk about it where we're like, oh, blood on your hands and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's where these expressions come from.
Yeah, Shakespeare, a lot of expressions originated in Shakespeare.
100%. So, in the morning, to a certain extent, I guess, political rival of Macbeth's named Macduff. Yeah, keep up with that shit. I know.
You know, like, this one really bugs me about it. Like Othello's not much better, and neither is A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Midsummer Night's Dream is so bad.
Fucking names.
Yeah, it's terrible that way. I can never tell which guy is which in Midsummer Night's Dream.
No, but this one, Macduff and
Macbeth. Anyway.
Duncan. We've got a lot of mucks and the ducks and
it's Scotland. So.
And Malcolm. Anyway, keep going.
If anybody Scottish ever listens to this, they're gonna be like, you guys are so fucking stupid. If it makes you feel any better, half my family is Scottish.
And we are quite dumb.
Yeah. Anyway, in the morning, Macduff goes to see the king and is like, whoa, holy shit, he's dead. Yeah. And of course, Macbeth, in order to cover his tracks, follows him in and then is like, oh, well, the servants are holding the daggers. It was definitely them, and just murders them immediately. No questioning.
That is, like, everybody dies in this one.
Well, it's a tragedy. That's one thing you got to know about tragedy. Shakespeare tragedies, everyone by the end will be dead, and in a comedy, everyone will be married. So...
yeah, I guess that is the rule.
Because those are basically what you get with Shakespeare. You get to get married and be happy, or you get to die.
There is no in between.
Marriage or death.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's true.
There's no in between for any characters.
Yeah.
So, and of course, when he does this, Macduff is immediately like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Like, he's immediately suspicious. Well, yeah, I mean,
he's
like,
on.
What?
The man, like, rocks in, is like, oh my god, it was the servants. Stab, 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 kill, kill. And it's like, like, that was a weird reaction.
Like, whoa, okay. So, anyway, and then, of course, they learn that Malcolm has fled. And, you know, of course, Macbeth is like, oh, yeah, that must be because he did it.
I'm gonna go kill him, too, now.
And the others are like, okay. I mean, he's like, I don't see why the fuck would he do that? Like, that makes no sense at all. So basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out, and they're like, well, what do we do? Like, you know, do we, like, crown another person? Do we do this? Do we do that? And then I guess, technically, for some reason, that means that Macbeth is next in line,
which is... get the throne.
Yeah. Which is wild. I was like, really? I was like, that's it? That's the next one?
It's just, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's got to be, like, a third cousin twice removed that's got to be in there before
another one somewhere, something like that. So yes, Macbeth is crowned king, which, like, what the fuck? And so basically, and then afterwards, all he does is become very pissed after that because he has no children. At the beginning, we did see that they had a baby that died. Which you're like, oh, that's a way to open a film. Anyway,
I
know. Anyway, so they did. Yeah, so he and Lady Macbeth did have one child who died. He has no heirs, and so of course, after he is gone. It technically, if he dies, it will pass to, I believe, Banquo and his heirs after that as well. His son Flance. What a weird name.
Flance.
How would you say that with a Scottish accent, Shireen?
Flance. Come here, Flance, laddie. Flance. No, now I just sound southern.
You do. Oh, I'm sweating. Okay. Oh my god. Anyway, anyway, because of this, again, and because, like, the madness is kicking in, the ambition has surpassed what it should have surpassed at this point, Macbeth is like, oh, well, I guess that means we're going to have to kill Banquo and his, like, 7-year-old son. Whoops.
Like, he just starts killing everyone, and it's like, do you not think anybody's going to notice that you're just murdering the whole court?
Yeah, seriously. But Flance does get away. He doesn't die. The small child isn't murdered. Well, for now, there's no small child murdered. Just wait till later. Anyway, so he gets away. And then, of course, Macbeth, who's, like, killed Banquo, sees his ghost, and then more madness kicks in and everything. And he speaks to the ghost, and Lady Macbeth is like, oh, God. Oh, boy. Anyway, because he's ranting and raving, everybody kind of dips, like everyone who was there for the celebrations that started before everyone started being picked off one by one.
They're like, we're going to go.
Well, this really turned into an Agatha Christie story at some point, all of a sudden. So anyway, so because of that, like, Macduff leaves. He's like, oh, something fucking weird's going on here. And he's the only person with any sense in this story. So he dips with his wife. He's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
We see the witches again.
Yep.
They come back and
talks to them.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, look, like, you know, like you're going to be the king and everything, but you got to be careful because Macduff's definitely going to try and take that away from you. So definitely you should
better go murder Macduff.
Yeah, you better go get rid of him too." And he's like, "Okay, fine." And what they say, which is only something that makes sense later, is that Macbeth will be king until Great Burnham Wood comes to the royal castle at Dunsinane Hill, which doesn't make any sense because you're like, how would the forest get, like, stand up and walk? Like, they're not ants. Like, how would they stand up and walk over to the castle?
Little orc.
To the castle. Anyway, so.
Wasn't there a whole thing about, now I might be getting away from myself here.
What are you thinking of?
Never mind. Hang on. I've forgotten now. I was going to say, like, wasn't there something about, like, a prophecy about someone who was not born of a woman or something?
Yes, that's a Macduff thing too. Yeah, because his mother died during childbirth or some shit like that. It's like it's a loophole. I don't know. It's a loophole in the script.
Because she was dead, so she was
because she was already dead, and they had to cut the baby out of her or something.
I guess that makes sense.
And because he wasn't born, like, you know, because at the time it would have been you have to be born in the traditional sense in terms of, like, actually like,
and, like, she would have had to be alive.
Yes,
to still
as
be
opposed
a
to,
woman.
like, a C-section kind of thing, which my understanding is that that's what happened. They had to do that to get the baby out.
Right. Okay.
It's very Game of Thrones.
Whatever.
Anyway,
I have little patience for this play, to be honest. It's not my favorite.
Oh, really?
It's
like one of my favorites.
Really?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's good. I like the witchy stuff, but I wish they had more space in the story.
I mean, yeah, they're mostly used for exposition purposes, which is why I can't believe that people have this whole thing about, like, it being like, oh, because of, like, the witch spells and stuff. I'm like, there's, like, one spell. Did you guys know that this is where double toil and trouble comes from?
I did know that.
Yeah, because that's one of the spells that they use. And what else? There's a few lines that are, like, things that are, like, something wicked this way comes from this. And there's, like, a few other ones specifically that are only because these are, like, the way that the spells are written.
That is wild. What I like about this, though. You're right. Sorry. The writing is good in this play. It's the plot. So my thing with Shakespeare is...
it because you get mad about men and
pretty
politics?
Pretty much. Like, my whole thing with Shakespeare is that I have to focus on the writing specifically and not on the plot. Because if I start paying too much attention to the plot and what everybody's doing, I'm like, y'all are stupid.
Well, you could definitely say that about stuff like The Merchant of Venice as well.
100%.
So, yeah.
With Shylock and, like, all that.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
all of the anti-Semitism and everything in there, too. And, like, in Othello.
But, like, there are some beautiful lines
100%.
Like,
100%. I don't know. I've always liked Macbeth. I was probably drawn to it when I was younger because of the witches. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But also just, I guess I don't know. There's something, I mean, like, it doesn't work out for anyone, but there's something kind of satisfying about overly ambitious men in politics getting what they deserve.
All of them murdering each other.
Kinda, but it's kind of satisfying to me. Like, that could continue to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, you just looked behind me like there was a ghost up there.
No,
I really
sorry.
wish you wouldn't do this.
Sorry. I've just noticed where, like, he put that up there on the bookshelf. Oh. And I do not like that for my aesthetic.
Oh, God. She's staring at something and I'm like, oh God, it's like when the cats look past me, like they're looking at something all creeped out and I'm like, what is it? Not fair. Anyway.
My bad.
It's
sorry,
all good. So yes, obviously, again, because everybody has left and Macbeth is, like, fully off his fucking rocker at this point, he's like, oh, oh, can't have anyone trying to take this away from me. So then he sends troops to Macduff's home where they, where he is not yet, because he's gone to find Malcolm, where they promptly murder his wife and several children. All of them.
It's
I think there's 3 or 4
horrible.
of them. It's really sad.
It's horrible.
It's really terrible.
Yep.
And while this is, so that happens, and he has to hear about it, and he is obviously completely distraught, and then vows revenge, because that's what you do in a tragedy. Moving on. Anyway, Lady Macbeth has also hit her breaking point now, where we thought she was going to be the one who made it all the way through without going crazy, but no, she does. So she has her very famous soliloquy called Out Damned Spot.
Yeah.
How'd I say? Yeah, that's it. Where she is phantomly seeing the blood that was on her hands when Duncan was murdered and when she was holding the daggers. Mm-hmm. She sees it and she's like trying to rub it out, even though there's actually nothing there. Mm-hmm. The way that we see it happen in that we don't really see it. We don't see her die in the movie, and in the play as well. She dies off stage.
Not important. She's the woman.
Exactly. She dies off stage. In this, like, the way that we see it is that she speaks to the witches as well. She sees them and she follows them out into the woods and up onto a hill. And my understanding is that she probably jumped off of the hill anyway, to her death. I love that this, like, you know, like, I love that it's like people are like, I think Macbeth might be going a little crazy, like, bro. If you see the way that Michael Fassbender looks at the beginning versus the end of this film, you're
he's
like
completely deranged.
Oh, he's just like, and he's like his eyes are bloodshot. He's super pale. He's got like giant bags under his eyes, and you're like, whoa,
are you okay?
You okay, buddy? And he's basically just wandering around talking to himself at this point and just being angry about everything. He also has a really famous soliloquy like tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, where he's pretty much talking about
out, brief candle.
Yeah, that's it, where he's pretty much talking about, that's it, like how things will just continue forever and ever and ever, and I will keep doing this forever and ever and ever kind of thing. It's pretty wild. But
I think that is, like, really great, like, if you want to draw parallels for, like, you know, people in position of power and stuff, like, they don't know when to stop, even, like, when it's clearly destroying everybody around them. Their life has completely fallen apart, and they're like, well, I'll just keep going and going and going and going. And it's like they believe that by keeping going, they will eventually reacquire all the things that they lost.
Exactly.
You know?
And then, so he learns of his wife's death, and he's also very distraught, but he's still crazy. And he's like, and he also is basically told that Macduff and Malcolm are mounting, like, a defense against him. Like, they're like, no, we can't do this. We're basically going to come and, like, oust him because he's gone totally fucking crazy, and he definitely murdered the king. So, no thank you. So he is like, to battle, everybody. Me and my psychosis are coming along with you for the ride.
Watch me go.
Yeah. And in a really interesting, ironic twist, in order to stop the prophecy from coming to pass, he orders that Birnam Wood be burned. But when he does that, the smoke and all of the ashes and everything billow towards Dunsinane Hill. So Birnam Wood has come to Dunsinane Hill, which means that the fucking prophecy is coming to pass, because he was supposed to be king until that happened.
Yeah.
And he's very confident. Like, when he gets to meet Macduff, he's basically like, oh, no man born of woman can kill me. Yeah. And so then they have their whole fight, which looks pretty good, honestly. The only, like, what I will say, this movie is too long. They spend too many time on, like, small things, but artistically it looks beautiful to watch. And it is nice to see actual production value sometimes when you watch, like, a Shakespeare adaptation. That is the one thing that a film can give you that a stage production will give you less of, is, like, you know, the shots are beautiful. I think they shot in Scotland, and it looks fucking fantastic the whole time.
But it's too bad because they don't advertise it then, and they, like, release it as, like, an indie film.
I know.
And you're like, you went all this effort.
But the cinematography is beautiful. Yeah. Like, the performances are really good. Anyway, whatever. We're just complaining now. So they get to their final fight, and that's it. Macbeth has his whole, like, oh, it doesn't matter what you do because no man born of woman can kill me. That's what I know. And Macduff is like, oh, well...
No, funny you should say that.
You should mention that. So basically, yeah, that's it. That would be my understanding, is that his mother was probably dead or dying, and they cut him out of her womb pretty much in order to save him, I guess. And then I think we kind of get to the point where Macbeth himself has sort of, we're coming around the other side now, and he's realized everything that he's done, and he's like, okay, I'm not gonna, this obviously the prophecy's coming true. I'm not gonna fight this anymore, whatever. So Macduff kills him.
And the witches are just like watching.
And they're just watching because they're like, we did tell you.
Yeah.
We told you what was going to happen.
Another prophecy come to fruition, ladies.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I wish that they were the ones from Hercules.
Yeah. That thread won't cut.
This thread won't cut. What's wrong with these feathers?
We should watch that.
It's a great movie. Watch Hercules, guys. Yeah. It's not historically accurate or mythologically accurate, but it's so good.
Fantastic.
Oh, it's so good. Anyway, yes. Okay, so he allows himself to be killed. The witches, who now having observed that everything they've said have come to pass, just basically leave. They're like, all right, peace. And they did. Malcolm is actually made king at that point because he was initially meant to be the heir. And basically, that's pretty much what it is. Like, we just see, like, you know, a bunch of beautiful shots at the end. Flans, who was not murdered, thank fuck, running around. Is it Flans?
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I might be mispronouncing it. Anyway, you know, like, runs around with Macbeth's old sword and everything. And then I think that there might be some, sort of subtextual things to be like, oh, who knows what the next generation is going to be like, guys. They're probably going to do the same fucking thing. Like, something like that, probably.
I mean, if, you know, the modern day news is anything to go off, then
then kinda
doing the same thing.
Exactly. So yeah, I will say that's it. It's I don't know. It's always been a play that I've enjoyed. I've seen it performed like a couple of times, and I always have a good time with it anyway. But there is something to be said when you make a film version of something. There is something to be said for shortening it a bit. The runtime in this is like way too fucking long.
Definitely.
Because it's just, they did everything, and I get it. You wanted to make an accurate adaptation, and boy, did they succeed with that part of things. I really think that they did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those that becomes like, you pay attention to the performances, to the cinematography, and everything like visual about it, but it drags in several different parts. There are several parts where it's just like, whoo, boy, we're taking way too long to get through all of this. But anyway, have you guys seen this movie? Have you seen another? I don't even know how many versions of Macbeth there must be at this point. So have you guys seen any other versions that you've really liked or that you've really disliked for XYZ reason, whatever it is? You can let us know over on Instagram at fullybookedca or over on Threads, also at fullybookedca. And you can also hit up our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next month, guys, and a new theme, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.